Cat, right now you're starting to cave, get nice and tall, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you over here, get the arms up, arms up, arms up, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, push down, down, push the palms up, get tall, palms up, get the arms in a little bit, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me... Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with TV Fork, and today I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 exercises for low back pain. And be sure to stick around to the end of the video because I'm going to be explaining at the end why exactly these exercises are important and how many sets, repetitions to do in order to make them the most effective. Now, with regard to these exercises, the very first one is going to be the 4-part glute series. With regard to the 4-part glute series, if you were to take a look at the Gluteus Maximus and divide it in half, you would have a lateral portion and a medial portion. And then you could further subdivide it into another half. So you would have the lateral portion, the medial lateral portion, then you would have the medial lateral portion and the medial portion. With regard to the Gluteus Maximus, it is responsible for hip extension, external rotation, and also abduction. So depending on how exactly you play with the levels of abduction and adduction and also internal and external rotation, we can target specific fibers of the glute. Now, with all of these different exercises, it doesn't matter which version you are doing, every single version is going to target all of the fibers in the glutes. However, we can emphasize specific fibers depending on the orientation of the legs. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. I'm going to have Kat lay down on the floor. Now, this first variation of the 4-part glute series is going to target the lateral fibers of the Gluteus Maximus, specifically the deep fibers. If you were to imagine this business card being your glutes, let's say this is your right glute, you have the medial fibers, you have the lateral medial fibers, then you have the medial lateral fibers, and then the outermost fibers are going to be the lateral fibers, so right toward the outside. Those are going to be the fibers that we are going to be targeting with this exercise. For this one, what we want to do is you are going to have your patient or client flex their knees so that their feet are nice and flat on the floor. Then what you want to do is take a business card, some type of currency, put it in between their thighs, and they are going to squeeze that. They are then going to separate their feet roughly shoulder width apart. So let's separate your feet a little bit more. Perfect. Next, the navicular, which is the bone on the inner arch of the foot, you want to press the navicular down into the ground. So just flatten out your arch on both feet. And then with the arms, you want to bring your arms up at the glenohumeral angle in order to stabilize the scapula. So Kat is going to just take her arms and place them right out to the sides. Same thing. Next, you are going to keep the chin tucked in, maintain axial extension. So for the crown of the head, you're going to push in the opposite direction of your spinal column. And then with your eyes, you want to look between your thighs so you can get some tension on the dura mater. So just look between your thighs with your eyes. And now, maintaining all of these different positions, Kat is now going to round her spine 1 vertebrae at a time, starting from the sacrum all the way to L5, L4, L3, and so on. So right now, you're going to do your basic hip extension without losing the business card. So squeeze your legs together and do a hip extension. So just round your spine, go into retroversion of the pelvis, tuck your pelvis underneath you, and lift up, and back down. And you want to try and do it 1 vertebrae at a time. So when you are coming up, you want to lift up the L5 first, and then L4, L3, L2, L1, and continue to do that until you've gotten to the base of the lumbar spine, and then you're going to go back down, same thing. You're going to go in reverse. You're going to lower L1 to the floor, L2, L3, L4, L5, and that is basically the exercise for the lateral fibers of the deep Gluteus Maximus. Next, we are going to target the fibers for the medial lateral fibers. For this one over here, Kat is going to put her feet together. Same thing, we are going to squeeze the business card. Do not let the business card drop. You're going to push the navicular down. Everything else is the exact same. You're maintaining retroversion of the pelvis, arms at the glenohumeral angle, chin is tucked in, eyes looking down between your thighs to activate the dura mater. And same thing, you're going to go 1 vertebrae at a time. You're going to round your spine and do a supine hip extension. Let's go a little bit quicker. Perfect. And back down. And this is the exercise for the medial lateral fibers. Next, we are going to do the deep fibers of the Gluteus Maximus for the lateral medial fibers. So this is going to be a little bit closer to the midline. For this one, this is going to resemble your typical hip bridge that you will see most people doing in the gym. For this one, you want your feet hip width apart, and you also want to separate your knees. And everything else is exact same. We have the arms at the glenohumeral angle, chin tucked in, eyes looking down between the thighs to activate the dura mater or put the dura mater under tension, retroversion of the pelvis. And now Kat's just going to lift up and down, same thing, one vertebrae at a time. And back down. And this is the variation for the deep fibers of the gluteus maximus, specifically the lateral medial fibers. And then finally, we have the medial fibers. For the medial fibers, this is going to be closest to the midline, so closest to the butt crack. Those fibers are the ones we are targeting. For this one, Kat is going to put her feet together. She's going to push the navicular down to the ground, so you want to flatten your arch. Then you are going to spread your knees apart as far as you can without letting your arch lift up off the ground. So you want to maintain that navicular with contact with the ground. So you went a little bit too far. Let's bring the knees a little, perfect. Hold it right there. Everything else is the exact same. So now you are just going to lift your pelvis up toward the ceiling, one vertebrae at a time. And then go back down. And this is the variation for the medial fibers of the gluteus maximus, specifically the deep fibers. That is it for the 4-part glute series. The second exercise is going to be the myofascial stretch for the psoas major. The psoas major, when one is contracting, it is going to be responsible at the trunk for ipsilateral flexion. It is also going to be responsible for contralateral rotation. At the pelvis, it's going to be responsible for anteversion. And at the femur, it's going to be responsible for flexion, adduction, and external rotation. So the concept with the myofascial stretching is we want to reverse engineer all of those actions. So what I'm going to have Kat do is she's going to get into a half kneeling position, so basically the bottom position of a lunge. And when you are in this lunge position, the psoas that we are stretching is the psoas on the side of the knee that is on the ground. So right now in this position, we are going to be stretching Kat's right psoas major. With regard to this exercise right over here, the first thing that we want to do is we are going to have Kat go into retroversion of the pelvis by tucking her pelvis underneath her. Next, what we want to do is you are going to take your ankle and move it to the outside of your foot. And let's go onto your toes. And then with your ankle, you want to push into my finger. So really push that ankle out. Perfect. That is going to cause internal rotation of the femur. So remember, one of the actions of the psoas is external rotation. So we want to go into internal rotation. Another one is adduction. So because it's responsible for adduction, we want Kat to go into abduction. So she's going to glide her body to the side, placing her, so maintain straight ahead. And you want to shift your body over that way to get perfect, to get into abduction. Next, we want to maintain retroversion of the pelvis and get a nice neutral spine. So try and flatten out your spine. Perfect. Now you want to get your arms to stabilize the scapular girdle. You're going to flex your shoulders to 90 degrees, maximal extension of the elbows, maximum extension of the wrists, so point your fingers up toward the ceiling, and then maximal external rotation of both arms. Now from this position over here, the next thing that Kat is going to do, she is going to shift her hips forward because remember, it's responsible for flexion, so we want to bring the hips and the trunk into extension. So just drive your hips forward into my fingers. Perfect. Because it's responsible for ipsilateral flexion, we want her to contralaterally flex the trunk. So she is going to side bend away from the side that we are stretching. And then because it's responsible for contralateral rotation, we are going to go into ipsilateral rotation. So she is going to rotate toward the side that we are stretching. So maintain the lateral flexion and then rotate to the opposite side. Keep that chin tucked in. Push the crown of your head up toward the ceiling. With your eyes, look down toward the floor. Keep that chin tucked in. Keep the arms right in front. And you want to maintain all these points of contact. So she's pushing out with the palms, pushing up with the crown of the head, keeping the chin tucked in, push out with the ankle, out with the ankle, out with the ankle. Maintain that retroversion of the pelvis. Up, 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 up. Keep that chin tucked in, chin tucked in. And you want to maintain all of these different components of the stretch. If you start to lose any of them, or if it starts to feel really easy, most likely you've lost one or more of the components, and you want to make sure that as best you can, you maintain all of these. You want to do this for at least 30 seconds. Let's bring your arms a little closer. But this is the myofascial stretch for the psoas major. So real quick, what we want to do is we are going into internal rotation of the femur. We are going into abduction. We are going into extension of the hip, retroversion of the pelvis, contralateral flexion of the spine, ipsilateral rotation. We are pressing out with the palms, keeping the chin tucked in and pushing the crown of the head up, and then looking down to put the dura mater under tension. And that is the myofascial stretch for the psoas major muscle. The third exercise that we're going to be demonstrating for you now is going to be the myofascial stretch for the rectus femoris. The rectus femoris, it has two main actions. It is responsible for flexion of the hip and extension of the knee. And also, because it attaches to the pelvis, it's going to be responsible for anteversion of the pelvis. So again, we want to reverse engineer all of those movements. We're going to go into retroversion of the pelvis, we are going to extend the femur, and we are going to flex the knee. The first thing that we're going to do in this is, once again, we are going to be in a lunge position, so a half kneeling position. Kat is then going to get into the Terminator stance and put her hands right on the floor. Next, with your left hand, so whatever leg you are stretching, for Kat right now, we are stretching her right rectus femoris. With her left hand, she's going to reach back and grab her ankle and try to get her heel toward her butt. Then you want to pull the heel toward the midline, so get it right toward the middle of the butt. And then Kat is going to get nice and tall, so get into that tall lunging position, and tall kneeling.
Arm up.
Yep. Yeah, get nice and tall. Perfect. Next, we want to get retroversion of the pelvis since it's responsible for anteversion. So what you want to do is tuck your pelvis underneath you. So just push into my finger, push into my finger. Now we are going to shift your hips forward, bringing the femur into extension. So try to go a little bit more forward with the hips. Perfect. Maintain a nice neutral spine. Now again, with your arm, you're going to flex it right in front of you, go into maximal extension of the elbow and wrist, maximal external rotation, and then bring your arm, flex your arm right up overhead so that it's in line with your ear. Higher, 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 higher. Perfect. Then you're going to keep the chin tucked in, push the crown of the head up toward the ceiling. Keeping that chin tucked in, make sure that you don't lose that. Keep it tuck, 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 tuck. Perfect. Push up, push up, push up. And all of these positions, you want to be able to maintain all these components. So let's keep that extension of the wrist, keep that external rotation as much as you can. Press the palm up, crown of the head up, keep that chin tucked in, keep that pelvis, retroversion, perfect, keep the head tucked in, push the head. And this is the myofascial stretch for the rectus femoris. The fourth exercise is going to be the L4, L5 ELDOA. With regard to this one over here, we are going to start in a seated position. Next, what we want to do is we are going to place the heels of the feet roughly at in line with your ischial tuberosities. If you don't know where your ischial tuberosities are, if you were to make a fist and place it right in front of your body, roughly that is going to be the width of where your ischial tuberosities are. They are your sit bones, the bones where your hamstrings connect. But anyway, Kat is going to bring her heels together roughly one fist width apart. A little closer, 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 perfect. Now from this position over here, she's going to flex the hips and knees so that the knees are up to 90 degrees. So let's flex the knees, bring them toward your butt. Perfect. Now, next thing that we are going to do, dorsiflex the feet, so point your toes toward your head. And then you are going to go into eversion of the feet, pointing the soles of your feet out toward the outsides, and do that on both legs. From this position over here, next, we are going to go into abduction and external rotation of the femur by driving the knees down toward the floor. Keep going down, 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 as much as you can. Perfect. Next, we want to maintain a nice neutral spine, so don't let me touch you here. Get nice and tall, 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 tall. Don't let me touch you, get taller. Perfect. Bring the arms out in front. We're going to go into external rotation and maximum extension of the wrists and elbows. So go into maximum of all of those. Perfect. Next, you're going to flex the shoulders to 180 degrees, so get them right up in line with the ears. A little more if you can. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you. Perfect. Then keep the chin tucked in. Keep that chin tucked in. Crown of the head up. With your eyes, look down to put the dura mater under tension. And this is going to be the final position. We are going to maintain all of the components. And you want to make sure that you maintain all of it. So, Kat, right now you're starting to cave. Get nice and tall, tall. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you over here. Get the arms up, arms up, arms up. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you. Push down, down. Push the palms up, palms up, palms up. Get tall, 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 tall. Palms up, palms up. Get the arms in a little bit. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you. Get the arms in. Don't let me touch you. Get the arms up, 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 up. Push up, push up, push up. Get nice and tall, 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 tall. Push the legs down, push the legs down. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you. And this is the L4, L5 ELDOA. This is the fifth and final exercise, and for this exercise, this is the L5S1 ELDOA, and I'm going to be showing you two different variations. This first variation is going to be done up against the wall, and then if you don't have a wall to perform this exercise, but you have a partner, I'm going to be showing you a partner-assisted version that you could do right after this one. But right now, let's get on with the actual L5S1 ELDOA. For this one right over here, what we want to do is have the patient lay down on their back, and so just lie down on your back, and you want them to get their butt right up against the wall to the point where it is touching. So let's get right up there, perfect. Next, now that we are in this position, we want to make sure that the knees are in extension, so maximum extension. You want the heels to be in line with the ischial tuberosities. If you recall, the ischial tuberosities are your sit bones, and if you're not sure where exactly they are, it's roughly 1 fist width apart. Then, cat is going to get into pseudo-inversion by dorsiflexing the toes, pointing your toes toward your head, going into inversion of the heels, of the ankles, and then internal rotation without letting the feet touch. So you want to do as much internal rotation as possible. Let's just spread out the legs a little bit more, and go into internal rotation without letting your toes touch. And make sure that you keep that dorsiflexion, so point your toes toward your head, perfect. Now, one of the reasons why we want this against the wall is because we want the abdominals to be as relaxed as possible. It's going to be a little bit difficult. You're going to be able to contract them a little bit, but we don't want you straining. That is why we are doing this against the wall. Next, we are going to go into retroversion of the pelvis and flatten out the lumbar spine. So you want to press your sacrum down toward the floor and let your lumbar spine, let that push down into the floor as well. Next, we want to take the shoulders, you're going to bring them right out in front of you, go into maximum extension of the elbows and wrists, and then maximal external rotation of your shoulders. And then one arm at a time, you are going to lift right up overhead. Okay, let's get the other arm up. Let's get it a little bit closer. So you want to get the arms as close to the ground as you can without losing the arch of the spine. So you want to press that down into the ground. Perfect. Keep that chin tucked in. Then we are pushing the crown of the head out away from the body. With regard to this one over here, same thing with the eyes. We want to look down between the thighs to be able to get as much tension as possible on the dura mater. And we are maintaining all of these components. So the sacrum is pushing down into the ground, so push your sacrum down into the ground. Glide your heels up toward the ceiling. So you're pressing down and gliding up, pressing down and gliding up. Maintain that dorsiflexion, point your toes, point your toes. Keep them rotated in, go into internal rotation, but don't let them touch. A little more, a little more, a little more. Perfect. Keep that chin tucked in, keep looking between your thighs, and then you're pushing your butt into the wall and pushing your palms and the crown of your head away from the wall. So you're pushing out with the palms, pushing your butt away. So you are pretty much pushing away at both ends to create as much axial extension as possible. Maintain all of those points, keep the internal rotation of the femurs, so point your toes in without letting them touch, perfect. Push out, push out, push out, keep the chin tucked in. Push up with the heels, up with the heels. Dorsiflex, dorsiflex, dorsiflex. Maximum extension, maximum extension. Don't let me touch you, don't let me touch you. Try to keep the abs relaxed, perfect. And this is the L5S1 ELDOA. This is going to be the second variation for the L5S1 ELDOA. If you do not have a wall where you are training and you do have a partner, you can do this one as a partner-assisted ELDOA as opposed to doing it up against the wall. So this run right over here, you are going to need some type of person to assist you. Pretty much though, everything is the exact same that we did it with the up against the wall. The only difference is you are doing it with a partner. So the first thing that we want to do for this one, we are going to straighten out the legs, so keep the knees nice and straight, and we are going to flex the hips to 90 degrees. Then what you are going to do is you want to put your toes underneath the patient's sacrum. Your toes are going to act as a biofeedback mechanism, so if you notice that their butt starts to lift up off of your toes, you want to get them to squish your toes with their butt. Now from this point over here, again, we want the heels in line with the ischial tuberosity, so we're going to spread the legs a little bit apart. Then we want to dorsiflex the toes, so you're going to point your toes toward your head. And we want to go into inversion, so point your heels in, point the soles of your feet in. And then internal rotation without letting the toes touch. So point your toes toward each other without touching. Perfect. We also want to maintain extension of the knees. With the arms, you're going to flex the arms right out in front of you and maintain maximal extension of the elbows and wrists. Go into maximal external rotation. And then bring the arms directly overhead in line with your ears. Keep the chin tucked in. Don't let them, keep them elevated, but bring them down a little bit lower to the floor. Perfect. Now keep your chin tucked in. You're going to push the crown of your head out away from your body while keeping your chin tucked in. And with your eyes, you're going to look down between your thighs. So you want to maintain all of these components. So what she's going to do right now, she's going to squish my toes with her butt. So squish my toes, while simultaneously pressing up with the heels. So you're squishing my toes, pressing up with the heels, squishing my toes, pressing up with the heels. Then, the sacrum, what you want to do is press the coccyx down into my foot that way, while simultaneously pressing your arms away from your body, keeping the chin tucked in and pushing the crown of your head away from your body. So we're doing that to create axial extension. We want to imagine that somebody's being pulled from both ends. So they're pressing their sacrum out that way, and they're pressing the arms and the crown of the head out that way. And then vertically, they are pressing their sacrum down into the floor by squishing your toes, and the heels, they are gliding them up. So everything is going in opposite directions. So press up, squish my toes, keep the chin tucked in, look between your thighs. And then when we get out of this one, same thing. We want to get out nice and slowly. So we are going to start by relaxing one arm at a time. So take one arm right out in front of you, relax it onto your stomach, and then bend one leg at a time. So let's bend the right, left, and then they can roll onto their side and get out of the position, but that is the L5-S1 ELDOA. And those are my top 5 exercises for low back pain. In terms of the order of these exercises, for the average person, you can do them in the order that we actually perform them. So the very first one that you would do is going to be the 4-part glute series. That is your strengthening exercise. Then you could do the myofascial stretch of the psoas, the myofascial stretch of the rectus femoris, and then finish off with the ELDOAs. You could do the L4, L5 first, and then you could do the L5-S1 ELDOA to finish it off. Now, with regard to these exercises, in terms of the sets and repetitions, for the 4-part glute series, one of the reasons why we are doing it is because the glutes are responsible for posteriorly tilting the pelvis, or retroversion of the pelvis. Most people, a lot of reasons that they have back pain is because of dysfunction in the lumbopelvifemoral complex. I went into this a lot more into detail in my video a few weeks ago. It was called 10 Years of Sciatica Gone. I'll include a link right up over here if you want to check that out. But the glutes are responsible for posteriorly tilting the pelvis. So by strengthening the glutes, this is going to help neutralize the pelvic tilt. And one of the reasons why it's such a great exercise, first of all, when it comes to postural exercises, is again, we want to accumulate a lot of time under tension. So this exercise over here, 3 sets of 50 repetitions, that's 5-0, not 1-5, is what you would want to aim for. With regard to this exercise, if you are not able to get the full hip extension because you're very limited in your hip flexors, then that is where the myofascial stretching comes in. Because the psoas and the rectus femoris are both responsible for flexion of the hip and anteriorly tilting the pelvis, we want to stretch those muscles out, because again, if we can strengthen the muscles that will posteriorly tilt the pelvis and stretch the muscles that anteriorly tilt the pelvis, this will help to neutralize the curvature in the actual spine and also the pelvic tilt to correct that. Now, with regard to the actual myofascial stretching, let's say you have somebody that is very limited with their hip extension. You can do, in that instance, the myofascial stretching first, just to be able to get your patient to be able to get them to be able to do hip extension adequately. Because if they're very limited in hip extension, then they're not really going to be able to get that much glute activation from the 4-part glute series. But once we do the myofascial stretching, each one you want to hold it for 3 sets of 30 seconds on each side. And then finally, with regard to the ELDOAs, both the L4 and L5 and the L5-S1 ELDOA, you want to do those for 1 minute each at the end of the program. And that is 1 minute once you get into the final posture, not 1 minute from when you start getting into it. So you want to do all of the cueing. Let's say for the L4, L5, you get the heels in line, bring them up to 90 degrees, you drop the knees down to the floor, get into a nice tall spine, flexion of the shoulders, extension of wrists and elbows, arms up. Once they are in that final position, that is when you start timing it, and it is 1 minute from the time that they start. But those are basically the 5 exercises. Those are why they are beneficial, and those are the guidelines in terms of how many sets and how many repetitions to do. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as then we'll be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.